Hi, you guys, me again. All right, so if the internet keeps going in and out, I'll shut this down and try later. There's only two people left, Mr. Osterly and Jack. So this is Mr. Osterly's. I didn't call it chapter 13 because technically Jack will be chapter 13 because remember the title's 13 chairs. So this is Mr. Osterly. All right, so his title is Among the Dead. My name is Frederick William Osterly. In life, I was an undertaker. I lived my life among the dead. My father was an undertaker too, and I was born into the trade. I mean this quite literal. I mean this quite literally. My mother went into labor in the mortuary of the family business, while my father, unaware, discussed coffin choices with two recently bereaved sisters in his office above, like upstairs. My mother gave birth to me there in the mortuary with the minimum of fuss and no noise concerned, as she was not to further distress my father's grieving customers. According to her, I followed example and did not cry until after they had safely departed. I was 3 weeks early. It was the first and last time I ever demonstrated impatience, meaning hurry to get out of the mom. My father, it was said, had a face for undertaking. His features at rest naturally arranged themselves into a picture of somber mournfulness, so sadness because you're dealing with dead people, which was a great asset in his chosen profession. He looked the part, and so customers were content to put their trust in him, and they were right to do so. He was conscientious, hardworking, and had a natural sympathy for the pain of others. He saw people at their lowest ebb, broken, crazed, angry, and he treated them only with respect, courtesy, and immense care. He was quite masterful at his trade, but thought little about it. Mostly he was content to know that his work gave some comfort to his customers in their darkest days, even if many of them failed to appreciate this. Many times I saw customers turn their anger toward him. Occasionally they even struck him, but my father never bore them any ill will. He just kind of understood people are sad, they're angry, they want to vent to the person they're talking to, and he just kind of took it and understood it was part of his job. We see them to their rest, he calmly told me once, holding a handkerchief to his recently bloodied nose. The living and the dead, we see them to their rest. I began to work with him at a young age. Menial tasks at first, polishing coffins, cleaning other small chores and errands. Then, as my schooling progressed, I helped my mother with my paperwork and bookkeeping. Then, later still, I worked with the clients. This was how my father termed them. Our customers were the living, our clients were the dead. The clients are a lot less trouble than the customers, he told me once, but the customers pay the bills. I was not yet 13 when I began to help with our clients, but I still had very few to do with our customers for many years after that. I had picked up the technical side of the business with ease. I learned how to prepare a body for burial or cremation and learned the science and craft of embalming. I could even, in the rare instances where it was required, reconstruct the likeliness of the deceased to even the most badly injured faces. I had, if I had to say so myself, a rare talent for the dead, but not so with the living. I lacked my father's natural advantages in the business. My face did not possess the same delicate balance of features. Where he looked solemn and trustworthy, I seemed cold and aloof. And though, as time passed, I learned to imitate the care he showed to our customers, I had no understanding of their feelings, their pain. I did not understand loss. I knew all about death, or so I thought, but nothing at all about grief. Grief is like, how do you display sadness, emotion? In fact, I knew little about anything much outside of the tiny world of our house and the work we did. Throughout my school days, I was an awkward child and made few friends, and my father's profession made me an easy target for mockery and bullying. So I took refuge in my home life, and we were a happy family in our way. My father may have worn a permanent expression of deep sadness, and my mother could seldom be tempted out of silence, but we were contented with our with our lot, and we knew amongst ourselves that this was understood. We devoted ourselves to one another and to our work, and we drew strength from our sense of belonging and from the knowledge that we were doing good. And then my father died. My father died, and he taught me the last thing I needed to know about our dismal profession. He made me understand. I felt the loss of him keenly. My mother, too, of course, though again, all emotion and distress was carefully hidden from our customers. My father had died suddenly but discreetly after completing his duties at the funeral of Mr. Oliver Withenshaw. Mr. Withenshaw's widow had been distraught and had to be restrained from climbing down into the husband's grave to join him. But my father had whispered calming words to her and led her away. The wake was a dignified affair and passed without incident. My father, satisfied that all was well, departed early, meaning he left to go home early. He died quietly at the kitchen table shortly after arriving home, sitting up straight with his hands on top of the other at the table in front of him, his eyes closed. His heart, emptied by years of selfless compassion, simply stopped. His undertaker's face oddly looked less mournful in death than it had in life. When I found him there, he looked more peaceful and contented than I'd ever seen him. Those unfamiliar and confusing emotions that my mother and I felt at this time, we held in check. We were professional and maintained appearances for the sake of ourselves and each other, and for the business. We arranged my father's funeral, and we sent him to his rest, and we took comfort in the pride he would have taken in seeing the thing done right. And though we now carried a sea of sorrow in sight, we would not let it flood out and drown us. Instead, we held it safe within ourselves. The morning after my father's funeral, I saw a little more of his likeness in my reflection when I shaved. Life went on, and so did our business. With my father gone, my mother and I had much more contact with the customers, but I was ready for that now. I held within me my own grief, and it gave me understanding. I spoke to our customers with this new authority, and I took part of their sorrows from them and added it to my own. And I sent the living and the dead to their rest. I did it well. And for many years, it was all of my life. My mother made occasional half hearted inquiries about whether I might ever settle down and have a family of my own, but neither of us, I think, ever considered it a real possibility. I felt no need or want for such a thing. I played my part in this world well enough alone, and I knew too well the eventual fate of all living things. Besides, I had no wish to share my life with anyone. It was not a life that would suit another, I thought. And most of all, I did not wish to share my grief. Now that I had found it, I held it close. It had become an exquisite pain inside of me, a precious, delicious thing. I had spent so long feeling so little, and now, invisible to the world, I held a storm of darkness within me. It was agony and delight at once. Did not expect to understand. I did not. But somehow I felt that grief was my father's gift to me, and I guarded it jealously. In time, of course, my mother gave me more. 30 years after father's death, after an illness just long enough for us to prepare ourselves, she left the world. When the time came, she bade me farewell with a little fuss and as much strength as she had demonstrated at my birth. She said, "Goodbye, my child," closed her eyes, and was gone. She had arranged the funeral herself, and it was a and it was quite a masterpiece. Nothing extravagant, but everything perfectly correct. We did it well, as you would expect. I was the model of professionalism, as she would have wished, and spoke sincerely of her contributions to the business throughout her life. I did not speak of her as a mother. She would have thought it unseemly. I could tell you I could tell you of the years following that, but there's a little point. I served my purpose on the earth for another 17 years, and then I too left it. I had carried on the legacy of my father faithfully, I believe. I had sent many hundreds of the living and the dead to their rest, and I had done it well. But when I died, there was no one to send me to. But when I died, there was no one to send me to mine. So he didn't have anybody to send him off to rest. Like the dad did his job, the son then did the job, but now nobody is sending him. And that's important. Of course, there was a funeral, carefully prepared and run with perfect precision by the small staff that I had left behind, able men and well trained. They did it competent, cop, competently enough. It was organized and efficient, but it was hardly a challenge. I made I had made it easy for them after all. There was no one to console. There was a funeral, but there was no mourners, people that were there to be sad that he passed away. Oh, it was well enough attended. I was showing due respect, but none truly grieved my passing. No one really cared. And why should they? Why would the living care about my death when my own life had been devoted only to the dead? I cannot begrudge them their indifference. So my life ended unremarked upon, and that was an end to it. Only then, death was not the end. Then there was this: I was dead, but not gone. I was a ghost, a spirit, a wandering soul, whatever fanciful name you prefer to give this odd state. And I found that there were others like me, others who persisted in this half life, others who had failed properly to depart. Some are confused, some angry, some lost. Each, for whatever reason, cannot yet accept their fate. So I gather them together and they tell their stories. And it eases them a little. In due course, they will go on. Do not ask me where, and others will take their place. I am Frederick William Osterly, and in death, as in life, I am among the dead, and I help them to their rest. His little summary is short. Mr. Osterly blinks once slowly, then he meets Jack's eyes with his impassive, unreadable gaze just for a moment before he bows towards the ailing flame of his candle, blows it out, and his face dissolves into the thick black. Jack is alone now in a fragile pool of wavering light, staring out into the boundless dark as if he is floating in space. The others must still be out there, but his candle's weak glow cannot reach them. Not long for that flame now, not long left for that last glimmer of light, not long until the end of all this, whatever that might turn out to be. He takes in a measured breath, holds it for a second. He is scared, of course, but he is ready now. He doesn't know everything he is going to say, but at last he knows he will begin. I am not dead, he says. Is that all right? So, Mr. Osterly's gone. Jack is by himself. I am going to finish reading this book today because I want to take the AR test on it today, because Tuesdays and Thursdays are your only 2 days. All right, you guys, have a quick drink, go to the restroom, wash your hands, 20 seconds, soap and water, and I'll be right back.